What was Darth Vader's first realization once he was fully encapsulated in the suit? It wasn't just something that was a physical revelation. It was a much more deeper connection, something that was spiritual almost. This would be his home for the rest of his life. It's just another chip away of Anakin Skywalker dying a little bit more. Not fully, mind you. He never fully died. But with each passing moment that Vader lived, Anakin was subdued into the darkness more and more. Now, we're not going to talk about the physical pain or, the loss of the limbs, the heat on Mustafar, or the metal that was shoved into his body for limbs. We're going to talk about the moment with absolute clarity where Vader recognizes that he's no longer a man, that he is in a prison. He is just a tool and a puppet for Palpatine, only now in this tomb of black armor. Vader kneels before Sidious just weeks after Mustafar. He's clad in the now iconic black armor, breathing heavily and very rhythmic. But behind the mask, underneath the plating and the processors, isn't power, it's rage. It's actually claustrophobia, it's regret. And he thinks to himself, and I quote from the novel Dark Lord: The Rise of Darth Vader by James Luceno, "This is not living. This was solitary confinement, prison of the worst sort, continual torture. He was nothing more than wreckage, power without clear purpose." That right there was Vader's reality. Behind the myth and the fear, he's not really ruling the galaxy, he's surviving it. And this is when he starts to question everything. And I would even argue that this is maybe the beginning of Vader's eventual turn at the end of Return of the Jedi. Inside his private quarters aboard the Exactor, Vader examines the damage to his prosthetic arm after a recent battle. A standard Jedi, not even a master, had managed to wound him. The ligaments in his mechanical forearm had melted, and he looks at the hand and it hits him. Had the hand been flesh and blood, it would be shaking now. But it's not, and that's the point. The body is gone, the nerves are gone. The man, Anakin Skywalker, is gone. And what's worse is he realizes that even his connection to the Force might be weaker. He hears Anakin's voice, his younger self, mocking him. "You're not as powerful as you think." This sparks a spiral. Vader growls in torment, and then the question hits him. Did Sidious do this to me on purpose? Was the suit poorly designed out of necessity, or was it deliberate? Vader wonders aloud if the med droids that had built his armor were simply inept, or if the limitations were engineered. Was this the price for failing on Mustafar, or was Mustafar just the excuse Sidious needed to weaken him? He asks himself, had Sidious deliberately engineered this prison? The theory then builds in the book that perhaps all along the promise of apprenticeship had been nothing more than a ploy, when in fact, Sidious merely needed someone to command his army of stormtroopers, another Grievous, while Sidious reaped the real rewards of power, confident that his newest minion posed no threat to his rule. That thought right there, that's the origin of Vader's resentment. Let's be clear, Anakin Skywalker became Vader thinking he'd gain freedom, power, the ability to change destiny, the power to save Padme, but what he got instead was chains. Chains that could speak, breathe, and bleed. Chains that hissed with every inhale. And chains that obeyed Sidious. And the worst part really was that Vader knew all of this. He compared himself to Grievous, who of course terrified all of the Jedi, but also in reality was a slave, a puppet. He was a test case. And now Vader realizes that he's the next iteration of that same nightmare. And the third, I guess, really would have been Starkiller. There's a moment where Vader, standing in his chamber, lifts his face to the ceiling and growls in torment, not because of pain, but because of humiliation. His hand, his armor, the suit, all of it is a cage, and it was built for him by the man who promised liberation, Sidious. I want to touch on that dynamic because the master and the apprentice dynamic is something that really echoes back and forth through Star Wars, whether they be Jedi or Sith or not. Now, this was a true Sith bond, as true as you could make it. In the public's eye, Vader obeys. He calls Sidious master, he bows, he accepts commands, but in private, he hates him, he loathes him. There's a confrontation between them in the medbay, where Vader snaps. He blames the suit for his failure against Jedi survivors. He yells, "They wouldn't have escaped if this suit didn't restrict me to the point of immobility." Sidious doesn't deny the limitation. Instead, he redirects it and weaponizes it. he tells Vader, "First, let me reiterate that the Jedi mean nothing to us." And the translation here is really like, stop whining and just focus on killing. But of course, Vader won't let it go. And this is one reason why I like this book so much, because it shows a different side of Vader and Palpatine that we don't really ever see. He points at himself, then at Sidious. "Look at us," he says. "Are these the faces of victory?" This is one of the absolute rawest lines in the entire book. Vader isn't even hiding his disillusionment anymore. Sidious tries to brush it off with Sith philosophy that "we are not this crude stuff, Lord Vader, blah blah blah." But Vader spits back and says, "Yes, I've heard it before, too often." And then the line that cuts through all of the lies is this: "In the same way you told me the truth about being able to save Padme." And there it is. That was the massive wound. That's the betrayal. Sidious answers without flinching. "She died as a result of your anger at her betrayal, my young apprentice. I brought about the very thing I feared for her. I'm to blame." Sidious didn't fail to save Padme only. He used her death to break Anakin, to trap him in Vader's shell, to make him useful. Now, later on in the book, Vader says this: "What good is power without reward? What good is power without joy?" And of course, this is still, I would say, more so Anakin than we get to see him later on in the original trilogy. As I said, every year, Anakin just kind of gets more and more diminished. But because Vader asking about joy doesn't really exist, but this is that transitionary period. And Sidious responds, "Eventually you will come to see that power is joy." And that's probably one of the most twisted parts about this whole dialogue and back and forth between Vader and Palpatine, is that because Sidious thinks that power is joy, he thinks it should be that way for everybody. But to Vader, power cost him everything. So power for Vader is literally the opposite. It is tragedy. It is what destroyed his whole life. Padme, his body, his friends, his future, his humanity. And now he's starting to realize that horrible truth, that power didn't set him free, it enslaved him all over again. First with Watto, then the Jedi, and now with Palpatine. However, let's go even deeper into this theory. So Vader knows that Sidious set this up from the beginning. Okay, that's my theory, is that he thinks that he knows Sidious did all of this crap to him. And he starts to piece it all together. The war was a manipulation, his promotion was a trap, the temple massacre, Padme's death, Mustafar, all of it was engineered to break him. And Sidious didn't want a partner, he wanted a tool, a slave. And the suit was the final lock on this cage, just like Grievous, only this time with the illusion of choice. That's what ate Vader alive. That's why this book is so interesting. There's this other point in the book where he's reflecting on what happens to him, where Vader says, Padme and Obi-Wan were the ones who had sentenced him to his black suit prison, which tells us something, that he doesn't just blame Sidious, he blames them. Padme for not understanding, Obi-Wan for betraying him, for not believing, for not listening. And when he flexes his mechanical hand and stares through the red lenses of his mask, he doesn't see a Sith Lord. He sees lava, fire, scorched flesh. He sees failure. Vader's resentment towards Sidious only grows from here. There's a moment where Sidious taunts him, saying, "Why don't you try to strike me down, Lord Vader? What stops you?" And then he gestures to Vader's armor, "Because you know I could easily overwhelm the delicate electrical systems of your suit. In other words, you won't kill me because I own you." This is the sick power play at the heart of the Sith. It's not just about domination, it's about humiliation. Just like how Palpatine killed Plagueis. And Vader, he plays along, for now. As George said, he had nowhere else to go. What's he gonna do? Just go work at a grocery mart? No, that's his life now. But this seed of resentment, it never goes away, and that's exactly what makes this realization so powerful. Because this isn't just about being trapped in the suit, it's about realizing he was never free to begin with. So what does Vader do? He shuts down his feelings, he crushes the name Anakin Skywalker, he tries to kill his past, but the truth, of course, catches up to him. He can't, because that prison is not just physical, it's spiritual, and his soul wanted to break free. And until he faces that, until he accepts it, Vader will never stop suffering. And that's why this moment matters, because it's not the birth of Darth Vader, it's the burial of Anakin Skywalker. Of course, until Luke comes around and, we see Anakin's hand shoot up through the soil. But it's also the beginning of the ghost inside the machine, so to speak. I'm a big fan of this book. I think anything that James Luceno writes is quite a masterpiece when it comes to Star Wars. I hope you enjoyed this video. Let me know what your favorite parts were. We got to touch on a bunch of different things. And you can expect a lot more videos coming from this novel because I want to flesh it out and then create a playlist and just do one long video that has all of these things compiled for Dark Lord, The Rise of Darth Vader by James Luceno. If you haven't read the book or listened to the audiobook, I highly recommend it. Leave a like on this video for more of these, and I will see you in the next one right here at Star Wars Theory. If you're looking for a saber, we've got the best around at theorysabers.com. Go check it out for yourself and join the thousands of others in the saber community. Until next time, the Force will be with you always.